If you like my work, please consider to support me on Patreon. So I actually thought I would put up a video between my two comic reviews. So much for that notion, but in any case, let's take another look at Tempest's tale. The second issue opens with a short summary of Tempest's life since she lost her horn, to emphasize that it has come full circle with her being attacked by another Ursa and that she is still helpless in front of that monster, even though she tried her entire life to become stronger. Everything she did up to this point was basically for nothing. But this time something is different. Glitterdrops comes to Tempest's rescue and manages to distract the Ursa with some magic, but this makes it even worse. And then Glitterdrops calls her by her old name, Fizzy. This is when Tempest cracks. She releases her suppressed emotions all at once, demanding that Glitter calls her Tempest Shadow. She boasts about how she conquered nations and defeated princesses. She wants to prove that she has changed, that she isn't a small helpless Fizzlepop anymore, and as far as I read it, she wants to convince herself as much as she wants to convince Glitter. But Glitter is the thing that angers her the most. That traitor who abandoned her all those years ago has the guts to save her now? She is a powerful Commander Tempest. She can't be saved by someone like that. But then something weird happens. Glitterdrops not only says that she is sorry, but also that she is the one who should have lost her horn because she threw the ball into the Ursa cave to begin with. But she was scared and Fizzlepop went into the cave on her own volition because she always has been the brave one. And this makes Fizzlepop rethink the entire situation. In the first issue she made it very apparent that she resents her old friends because it could have happened to either one of them, but it happened to her. Now she actually thinks about what this would mean. First of all, Fizzlepop never really considered that anyone but her should go into the cave to get it. In the first issue her narration does mention that she went in to get it because she missed to catch it, but now she sees that she could have simply said to Glitter to go into the cave because she threw it. She never really thought about that, and both of her friends were obviously scared. I mean, Glitter does say that they stared at each other for a minute. This is pretty much taken out of the Stormy Road to Canterlot, I want to add. Though in the narration of that chapter book, it seems more like both Springrain and Glitterdrops expected Fizzlepop to go, as she always has been the bravest, but it should be noted that this chapter book is very much from Fizzlepop's perspective, and they never asked her to do anything in that version either. Now what difference does this make? Well, Tempest could have easily sent Glitter into the cave, but she never even considered it for a minute, so her idea of it could have been either of them doesn't quite hold true. She would always be the first one to go because that's the person she is. And more importantly, Fizzlepop finally comes to the obvious conclusion that she wouldn't really want anyone else to suffer like she did. She only considered the Ursa Minor incident as something bad that happens to her. She only ever wondered why it happened to her and how unfair life is. But now she finally realized that if she hadn't gone into the cave first, one of her friends would have been assaulted by the Ursa instead, and she wouldn't want them to be hurt. So Tempest finally accepts what happened on that fateful day and embraces Glitter again as a friend, and Ian tells her that she should call her Fizzy again. While I do think that she comes to her realization oddly fast, I do like the sequence. I like the symbolism of how Glitter is there for Fizzlepop this time around. Tempest boasting about her actually rather evil deeds is a rather powerful moment. It shows her inner struggle to come to terms with the person she is, and up to this point she tries her hardest to suppress her emotions. But as we learned in All Bottled Up, this isn't good for you. Sometimes you have to release your anger, and I think it was rather important for Glitterdrop to hear this as well. After that they have some small talk regarding Cadance's power and how Equestria is seemingly always in danger, with a nice reference to some earlier story arcs thrown in. But then Fizzy finally asks the one question that has been on her mind all these years. Why did Glitterdrop and Springrain abandon her? Glitterdrops and Springrain tried to include Fizzy as much as they could, and they didn't really mind that she couldn't use magic anymore, but they were under the impression that it only made Fizzy even sadder, and they felt guilty, so with time they asked her less and less. In the chapter book, which I assume to be canon in broad strokes by now, as this comic seems to borrow a lot from it, Fizzy shut herself in, giving the impression that she wants to be left alone. However, their conversation is interrupted when they finally find the trail of the Ursa, or rather when they hear its call. As Glitterdrops is seemingly as much of an anime expert as Fluttershy, she concludes that the Ursa is looking for his mother. Glitter is using a rather impressive illusion spell to create a fake Ursa Major to lead the minor to his mother. As Glitter has the focus to keep the spell up, she can't really talk that much, which is why we mostly get Fizzy's thoughts on the situation. She gets a bit philosophical and compares the Ursa to herself. They are both lost children, abandoned by their friends and family. The Ursa doesn't really have any intention to hurt others, but does so out of confusion and fear. They both only became violent because they want to get something back they lost. It's a rather interesting analogy for sure, especially when Fizzy concludes that the Ursa minor that attacked her all these years ago might have been the same, a lost child that only defended itself when a stranger invaded its home. Tempest's anger has been caused by a self-centered worldview. She was angry because bad things happened to her. She resented her friends because it didn't happen to them. The Ursa attacked her when she was just in his cave to get the ball. She never tried to see things from another perspective. It highlights a certain hypocrisy in her villain song. She wanted Twilight to see the world from where she stands, but she never herself tried to look at things from another person's perspective up to this point. It is only in this comic when she finally opens up her eyes, so to say. Besides that, the scene lets Fizzy acknowledge the strength of a friend, and she finally realizes that there's more to it than just pure power. After that, they have another bit of small talk regarding how Glitterdrops wanted to work in the Everfree Forest, but that too much bad stuff happened there, making a small reference to the season 4 opener in the process. But then Fizzy asked her question again: why did they abandon her? Or rather, why didn't they write her or come to visit after they enrolled at Celestia School for Gifted Unicorns? Well, as it turns out, they didn't do it because they were struggling a lot in that school. They couldn't keep up, and at least Glitterdrops dropped out eventually. Also, apparently they were in the same class as Sensei Shimmer and learned the question to 42 at that school. Now, I have mixed feelings regarding this. I personally liked it more in the chapter book, in which they never got the opportunity to write FizzlePop, as she decided to leave as soon as her friends announced they were enrolling at Celestia School. I think making FizzlePop more impulsive with her decision, that she didn't even wait for them to write her, was more interesting, though this is admittedly debatable. What bothers me more about this is, it makes Glitterdrops even more like Sunburst, who also failed at Celestia School and ended up in the Crystal Empire. However, I have to give the comic some credit, it handled it better than the Crystalling. Sunburst never explained why he never wrote a letter to Starlight or visited her. If you go back and watch my Crystalling review, you will notice that my personal headcanon is that he was too ashamed to write her because he considered himself a failure. But it is never quite explained in the show. This comic at least has the decency to do so. And yeah, if you're failing at your tests and struggling to keep up with your studies, you sometimes forget to call other people. Happened to me as well, so at least I think it's a sound explanation. What bothers me about all of this the most is that we never quite learn what happened to Spring Rain. I mean, he was struggling alongside Glitterdrops, but we don't know if he also dropped out or managed to finish his studies. Besides flashbacks, he doesn't appear in this comic, and I think this is rather disappointing. But then again, these comics are not exactly long, so I can't blame them for that. After that, Fizzy announces that she still needs to report to Cadance, and Glitter correctly points out that Tempest is seemingly not a big fan of princesses, hearts and tiaras, to which Fizzy comments that she still doesn't get the whole love thing, to which Glitter however replies that she only needs to know that she has a friend who loves her. This is incredibly cheesy and I like it because it's so incredibly adorable. After that, we get to the final scene in which FizzlePop reports to Cadance. As it turns out, Cadance was aware of Glitterdrops and Fizzy's history, but even though FizzlePop questions it, we never learn how Cadance learned about it, which is frankly a bit hard to believe. In any case though, Tempest begrudgingly thanks Cadance for this meeting, even shedding a tear of joy. And this is when Cadance becomes incredibly sassy. Frankly, can we get an episode of the show just with these two? I really love the interactions. Cadance and FizzlePop are pretty much polar opposites, which makes their interactions surprisingly engaging. And with that being said, let's wrap things up. The Return of Tempest Shadow is a very engaging mini-arc. One perfect, especially with the first part making the comic non-canon by default, as the very first page contradicts the first scene of season 8, it is still worth a read. Now, one thing you might want to criticize about the story arc, that it is very text heavy. It works for me just fine, but I feel obligated to point out that this comic has more text than average. However, the illustrations are still great. Especially the ursas look amazing, so if you haven't read it yet, I would highly recommend doing so. Also, if you're wondering what the future has in store for FizzlePop, apparently she will be recruited by Princess Luna alongside Trixie, Stygian and Keppa to form some sort of suicide squad named the Nightmare Knights, to save the world when nobody else can, which is pretty much the most amazing thing I have heard in a while. But what about you? Did you read this comic? Did you like them? Who should get the ball? The person who threw it or the person who was unable to catch it? Let me know in the comments below. I am Tricky Fox. Stay foxy.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell, but you know I'll never tell.